Hello, friends. I'm Tom, and I'm the lead pastor here. And this is the third series ever in our history. And I've probably over-prepared for this one, I'll be honest with you. I got really into it. My wife is really ready to move on. And it's going to make sense. It's going to flow great into the next series, actually. I didn't know it was going to flow great into the series until like 2 days ago when I was talking about it on the internet. My buddy Ian Abney always challenges me in ways, and I'm telling you, my best advice, my best thoughts come from like dealing with him in discussion. But so Ian, you should come here. You come to D&D, so why not come to Daylight? But so maybe he will come. So what's cool about this church, though, is that I'm not really afraid to make mistakes. I'm not afraid to be super bold, and I really think that making mistakes is one of the greatest gifts that a pastor can give to his congregation, like boldly being earnest and failing, if that's what happens. And if I fail in front of you and I can get up, that does two things. Number one, that gives you permission to fail, gives you permission to not be too cautious. It creates a safe environment, and a safe environment to make mistakes is the number one factor in developing emotional intelligence and the ability to grow and to be healthy. And we want to be a community that does that, and that starts with me. So if I mess up, I'll just say I'll apologize. I apologize probably too much, but I don't apologize for doing that. The second thing is it takes the focus off of me, because I'm not I mean, I'm cool, but I'm just joking. But I don't know if that's true or not. But the focus is on God, because God's the hope. God is who we hope for. God's who we long for. And the story of the scriptures is about putting our hope in God, right? O come, Emanuel, and ransom captive Israel is about God with us, coming to be with us, to ransom his people crying out in Roman captivity for God to come and ransom them. And the Son of God was born into this world. He was a king. He was visited. He was recognized. He immediately threatened Herod. But really, the name Son of God, when we think of that in our context, we think of him being the eternally begotten Son of God. But in that context, it had additional nuance. You know who else was called the Son of God? Caesar. Caesar is the Son of God. If you're Caesar and you call yourself God, they kill you. The ones who did call themselves God, like Caligula, I think it was, they killed him very, very quickly. But it's more humble to say my dad was God. You know, it's way more humble to say I'm the Son of God. But that justifies their rule. And if for Jesus to be called the Son of God is a direct challenge to the sovereignty of Caesar. And it may not fully dethrone Caesar, because Jesus doesn't decide to do that, but it absolutely does challenge the extent of Caesar's sovereignty, because Caesar might be in charge of this world, but he's in charge because God allows him to be. You know why Christianity is not liked in China? Because God is sovereign over that Communist Party, and they don't like that. They don't like that kind of rhetoric. It's still a challenge to people today. So we look for God to be our great hope. And we as Christians, I think, are having that same prayer today. O come, Emanuel, and ransom us. And it's okay. I just want you guys to know that this is. Do you know who was? Do you know who was the captor of Rome, the captor of Israel? When Jesus came, did Jesus go after Caesar? Was there an assassination, like botched attempt at Caesar? There was not one, because Caesar may have been the oppressor of Israel, but that's not who Jesus saw as their captor. Do you know who their captor was? It was Satan. It was the devil. And I realize that's not like a super seeker sensitive thing to say. And we talked about demons like 2 weeks ago. And but we're normally a very, very seeker sensitive church here. You know that. That's what we go for, to be seeker sensitive. And we're so seeker sensitive. You guys don't even know this, but we're actually Southern Baptists. We just don't want you to know about it. I'm just joking. We would never do that. If we were Southern Baptists, we'd put it on our sign, because I think it's a little bit faulty to be like, you can come be who you are and we'll love you for who you are. Oh, by the way, now that you like us enough that you might join us, now we want to be able to reveal this pivotal thing to our identity to you. I think that's a little bit off. I'll be honest with you. And people will look at our church and say, there's some stuff that's off there as well. And I'll be the first person to tell you, if you can't put your finger on it, I'll put your finger on it. The problem with this church, what's off about this church and makes it weird, is that I'm a weirdo. I'm weird. I'm a weirdo, and that's okay. I don't care. And I'm a weirdo, but that creates an unconventional environment sometimes, right? That pulls in people who would not necessarily be interested in going to church. I'm not, there's no gimmick. This is just who I am. Ask my wife. Like, this is what happens nonstop, and it's exhausting. And especially on more coffee. But this is who we are. It pulls in people who would otherwise not go to church. People who are church hurt. And that's a very cool thing. But it's a challenging thing too. You know why it's a challenging thing? Because church hurt people are not a monolithic population. You know, you can get hurt by your church, and the person next to you got hurt by their church for an entirely different reason. And that means you come at this from a whole different way, right? Like, you could be trampled by church politics. People who are trampled by church politics are the people who are involved, right? Those are the people who buy into their church, that want to go forward and take the mission of God from that church into the world. And they find themselves caught up with politics, insecure people, people wanting their way, and they get trampled. Who would want to go back into that environment? But then you have people on the other side. Maybe they didn't get trampled because they didn't get that far in, or maybe they did. They have questions, and they were told not to question. They were told not, if they did want to question and study, the pastor wasn't going to help them along their journey. The pastor wasn't going to help them. It's their job. He knows what's right, so you need to go figure it out. And if you do figure out something that's different, you just got to be quiet about it, because this is the script. This is what's said. And nobody disagrees with what we say. Now, we can't say that out loud because that sounds a little bit crazy, but that is what happens. And so you have people who feel like they can't go to church because they can't think for themselves. It's too evidence phobic. People are afraid of reason. And you have two different populations of people, but I think they all fit here, because I think I relate to both crowds very, very well. I relate to people who have been trampled by leaders who want total control, I think out loud, and I think critically, and I think weirdly, I think outside the box. And there's a test called the DISC test, and the form of leadership that I have is all thinking. It's all idealistic. And that's very, very threatening to other types of leaders, at least initially. You have to earn their respect, earn their trust. And I mean, it doesn't always work. And I understand what it's like to be pushed back. And I definitely understand what it's like to be in churches where the sermons are always the same. They're kind of bland. They either have a ton of life application with no Bible, or they got some Bible with a ton of life, without like life application. You're like, wow, that is really, really right. I don't know what to do with it, but man, it's smart, you know. And that usually doesn't have anything to do with the world at all. And I've actually heard sermons that I thought were harmful, where they're so set in their ways that minorities, other perspectives feel trampled. And I just relate to both crowds very, very much. And that's what leads to a weird sermon series like this, which is very, very odd looking, but I promise you it makes sense. You're like, what do cults have to do with Advent? Why would you be talking about cults and talking about the birth of Jesus? And I want to suggest to you that cults are very, very much in the public thought process right now. When you bring up, and not everybody up there is necessarily a cult. Like if you love Jerry Falwell Jr., he's up there, I know, but he's been in a sex scandal, so he's up there. And, Will Ferrell praying to baby Jesus is up there, and Buddy Christ and stuff. But so I had more fun making that thing than, you've no idea. I probably put hours into that thing. There's actually drafts of this one. But let's go to the next slide, Dave. These are just some of the documentaries that have come out in the past couple of years. Some of them are 6 years old. The only one older than 6 years old that I know of that's older is Jesus Camp. And that one, if you want to understand how progressives who have walked away from the faith see the faith, you got to watch that one. I told Michelle that I'd give her money to watch it with her, but she rightfully understood that that would not be healthy for her mindset, because holy cow, does that one get you riled up? Oh my gosh, child warriors. Oh, but when you look at it, you see the basics that everybody knows about. You see Scientology, and on the right, you see Jim Jones and Jonestown. You see Heaven's Gate, and those are the ones that have been around for a while, that have really been in the consciousness for like 20 years. Like why would a cult group kill a U.S. senator and then all drink poisoned Flavor Aid? I was calling it Kool-Aid because I thought it was Kool-Aid, and I have been told that it's unethical to call it Kool-Aid because it hurt Kool-Aid's brand, and they didn't drink Kool-Aid. I don't know why it hurts Kool-Aid's brand, because believe it or not, if you mix cyanide with milk, it's going to kill you. If you mix cyanide with Pepsi, it's going to kill you. Who cares that they mix cyanide with Kool-Aid? Apparently it hurt them. So they didn't drink Kool-Aid, they drank Flavor Aid. And if I was going to die that day, I think I would have sprung the extra 20 cents and got Kool-Aid, that's what I would have done. But we can look at this stuff with our jaw open and feel superior and be like, why would a bunch of wackos think that killing themselves is going to have them be uploaded into a UFO on the other side of the Hale-Bopp comet? We feel so superior to them. It's like watching Jerry Springer. But I think, Lord, I rebuke this. I'm just joking. I'm so. But I think the conversation has changed. I don't think people are looking at cults anymore saying, how could this super small minority of whack jobs do a bunch of crazy stuff against their reason and against better evidence? I don't think people are asking that question at all anymore. I think they're like, maybe they're all cults. Maybe they're all really messed up. Maybe they're causing everybody to step away from reason, causing everybody to step away from evidence, willing to do things that go way against their self-interest, way against their family's self-interest. Maybe they're all doing that. And when you look at some of these documentaries up here, those are not all people who think that they're going to be up on a UFO in 24 hours. A lot of those documentaries are like the cream of the crop of evangelicalism up there. Hillsong United is pretty big deal. You watch that documentary, it's disturbing. It's definitely impacted the way that we do things here, because if you make people feel manipulated to feel the presence of God, or it's terrible. It's terrible that happens. But we can feel superior to that keep sweet, pray, and obey, which is over here on the left. You can't see because this screen is not as ideal as I wish it would be. I don't know how to fix it either. I've put a lot of thought. If anybody has, as an engineer, knows how to fix this, please let me know, because I would love to do that. But this dude has 80 wives or more. His dad dies, and he decides he's going to take on his dad's concubines. So he's got 80 wives, and they run off all the boys. You know why they run off all the boys? So that these elite group of people can marry all these girls. It's human trafficking in the name of Jesus. It's the fundamentalist Latter-day Saints, because the LDS got rid of their polygamy because they wanted to be able to join the union and be recognized. These people disagreed with it. And there's more than one sect about it, apparently. If you watch this, like Escaping Polygamy, it's a different group of people that are affiliated with them when they're trying to get these wives out. Because if you watch it, it's so disturbing. It's so incredibly sad what happens to some of these people. These girls talking about, like, they meet the matchmaker, who's the leader, and the leader himself has selected himself to be their husband, and they have no idea how the reproductive process works. And they walk in there and they learn about it on their wedding day to a guy who's incontinent. It's disgusting, it's disturbing, and this is the kind of stuff that happens in religions. And it's easy to say we're so superior to that. But you watch The Keepers, it's also on Netflix. Holy cow. The Catholic Church's ability to control inner city Baltimore in the 70s, what they did to those little girls, those high school girls who had been molested and gone to the priest to talk about their shame, and the priest tells them that they have to reenact it with the priest in order for God to give them their forgiveness. And before long, and then they start advertising the idea about sexual abuse so that they can get more. and you find out that these priests were at a previous institution where they were doing it to boys, and they got moved to a girls' school, and then the police get involved, but the police are deleting this, are removing the evidence, and they're obscuring it. Are we that much better than them? If we had as much power as Warren Jeffs does and Keep Sweet and Obey, are we going to handle it any better? And we're evangelicals. We're so much better than the Catholics, aren't we? So much better, except the Southern Baptists are doing it too, aren't they? The Southern Baptists, what happened with them? All these people are being sexually abused. Let's get to the bottom of it. No, they lawyer up and say, we're not going to deal with it, right? Hillsong United, if I don't want to give anything away, but it's not, we shouldn't be watching it for entertainment anyway. You get to the bottom, it is it's well done. But when you get to underneath the manipulation, you can see that they are covering up sex abuse from their founder. Yeah. Is it any wonder that people who are starting to see this are wondering, is Christianity a cult too? How is it any different? It's like, oh come, Emanuel, and ransom captive evangelicalism. That could be the title of this sermon series. Oh come, Emanuel, ransom captive evangelicalism, because we're held captive. And we're not held captive by Caesar. You know who has us captive? The devil, Satan. You want to know what I think about that kind of stuff? I preached on that 2 weeks ago. I'm fitting a lot in here. I think it's appropriate that people are asking if we're a cult. I think it's appropriate that people are seeing this kind of stuff, that we just had no accountability. Whenever there's no accountability, this is what festers. This is what happens in any group. If you give people no accountability, the only thing that's going to rise is corruption. So is Christianity a cult? What is a cult? Dave, will you give me the next slide? Let's clear up a big-time misconception here. I almost put more stuff on there, but I thought it could be more disturbing, and I decided it is Christmas. So what's the difference between the cult and the occult? Because the occult is what a lot of people are going to think of when you think about cults. That's what I thought about when I thought about cults. You got the Eye of Horus, you got tarot cards, the Zodiac, guys or girls reading over crystal balls and channeling spirits, fortune telling. That's the occult. And that's not necessarily a cult. It could be, but we're trying to handle this responsibly, and it's really important that we don't just label people that we find with beliefs that we find distasteful cults. That's what some people will say is the definition of a cult, is someone who denies the Trinity, or somebody who denies. You can call that heretical if you want to, but that's not what a cult is. What is a cult? This is one of those times when Merriam-Webster was actually helpful. Sometimes he's like painfully not helpful. But this time he is, We got A religion regarded as unorthodox or spurious, which is what I just said we should not say, but people do use it that way. A great devotion to a person, idea, or object, movement, or work, such as a film or a book. A system of religious beliefs and ritual, and a formal religious veneration. That's kind of helpful, but underneath it is where it really got good. It really saved me a lot of time, actually. The next one, Dave. This was just on the website. It was there. And you can't read it because of the screen, but a cult which shares an origin with culture and cultivate comes from the Latin cultus, a noun with meanings ranging from tilling, cultivation, to training, or education, to adoration. Now that is where it gets helpful. And the reason I thought about this actually is I got it from N.T. Wright in this gigantic Paul book. He's got this book called Paul and the Faithfulness of God, and it's like 1,400 pages, and it's glorious. But I was thinking I had to go find where this stuff was at, and I was really nervous about it. Like, oh gosh. And it was on Webster's.com, and so it's perfect. The word cult has cultivate in it. It's got culture in it. Because cults are cultivated cultures, groups that are cultivating worship. I learned that from the same book, N.T. Wright. The reason we emphasize the religious rituals that we undergo is because we as a group are cultivating a culture that cultivates worship. We worship as a group because we have cultivated what it means to be here. That's what a cult is on a scholarly level. Now, when you get down to the pop culture level, it means something different. And the reason it means something different is because of Jonestown. When you get a bunch of people, they kill a U.S. senator, and they all drink a bunch of Flavor Aid, and then the leader doesn't do it himself. He shoots himself in the head because he's a coward. And that's the kind of stuff that will just catch the pop culture by storm. Suddenly, everybody's talking about cults. Cults become all the rage. They're talking about cult movies, Rocky Horror Picture Show, cult followings of Justin Bieber. There's all kinds of ways that cults have entered into our society. But on a scholarly level, they're not much different from religions. They're not that much different. It's really there's really no difference on a scholarly level. Now, when you talk to cult experts, they will talk about them as if they're different because most of these cult experts have been in cults and they've come out of it and they've recognized that they have to talk about this kind of stuff. So I think there's another one here, Dave. What's the next one? Oh, the different types of cults right here. So cults are not just religious. You don't have to be religious to be in a cult. There's counseling and self-help. You want to learn about one of the wildest cults that's ever existed? It's this thing called Synanon that was an offshoot of Alcoholics Anonymous, where everybody was gathering to get off the addict's way, and then it becomes this lifestyle, and they start clamping people down. And before long, it's like Godfather level stuff. You leave these cults, they come after you. People were quitting their cults and coming home to see that their dogs were lynched in their house. It was like Godfather, your horse is cut off and in the bed sheets with you kind of stuff. Like, you don't mess with us. You might be gone, but we'll kill you. And they armed up too. They were killing people. Savagely. An Alcoholics Anonymous group was killing people. That's what can happen. Exercise. CrossFit is a cult. It's not a suicide cult, but it's a cult. They pull you in. They make you feel superior to outsiders. They give you a whole new language. They pull you into this new culture, and you become different because you're a part of that culture. CrossFit transforms people. When you meet people who go to CrossFit, they become different people very, very quickly. I mean, if you go to CrossFit, that's okay. CrossFit's fine. It's expensive, but fine. Commercial cults. I hate to say it, but multi-level marketing are cults. They pull you in, and they change the jargon. They have ways of manipulating you into the group. And before long, you're not serving the group. You're not serving yourself. You're serving the group. Half that stuff you buy, you can't sell because no one it wants to buy it at marked up levels, but you're supposed to get other people to buy stuff that they can't sell so that you can make money off of them. And eventually it's just everybody's exploiting one another to help out two people up top, and they're all being manipulated to do it, right? It's not good. It's a cult. And political cults. I'm not even going to name names, but they're everywhere, right? There's plenty of different cults on left and the right, and there's people here in this room on the left and the right, and I don't think any of you guys are cults, okay? Just understand that. Okay. The issue is that everybody, when you join a new organization that has cultivated a culture, you are going to find yourself shaped by that culture. You're going to take on their rituals. You're going to take on their attitudes, and it's going to change you. Now, the question is it legit or not? What makes it legit? Now, this is where we're going to go into in the next group, the next series, talking about what makes a healthy community. What makes a community itself? A community is a gathered group of people who gather for a specific purpose. That's what makes a community. Because when you think about the people in the room here, how many people in this room did you know a year ago? And how many people in this area do you know, in like, whether it's Lexington or Mount Vernon or Winchester, Estill County, that you know better than people in here, people you have better experiences with, but you're not with them today. Why? You're here because there's a purpose for you being here. The purpose is what ties a community together. Because we talk about, this is important, listening to your inner voice. Your inner voice is made up of all kinds of things, like whether you're hungry, whether or not you want to have kids, whether or not you have kids, your experiences with your kids that you want them to experience, all kinds of things that you have inside of you, whether you're actively thinking about them or not, your subconscious mind is aware of them. And if something conflicts with it, something inside of you is going to tell you that something is conflicting with something inside of you, right? And you're going to feel it. You may not even know what it is. But that inner voice is what you have to listen to. And that inner voice is the same drive inside of you that pulls you into communities, because it tells you to do things. You are intentional. You are deliberative. Remember, Aristotle said slaves are not deliberative, therefore they have to be controlled. And everybody universally in this room rejected that, right? And so everybody is deliberative. Everybody has this ability to be intentional with their lives. And you intentionally are doing something because of the purpose for the group. And it's the purpose that allows us to maintain our individuality while also forming together as a community. It's not even the close bonds. Now, the close bonds come as a result of that. One of my favorite theologians, Dallas Willard, says that intimacy is shared experience. As we share experiences with one another in going about these purposes, we will become closer. We will like one another, but it'll be the purpose that keeps us together. You know, I haven't seen any of my friends from high school, and I love a lot of my friends from high school. I haven't seen people I worked with, and I still love them. There's not really a purpose to get together. There's a reunion, but they don't even want to do a reunion. Half of them don't want to do a reunion because they see each other on Facebook already. They're like, we know what's going on. Why would we get together? You know, there's no purpose for us to get together. And I disagree with that. You know, I just want to hang out with you. I want to like revisit the old days with you and interweave different parts of my life together. But that's neither here nor there. The purpose is what pulls us in. Your inner voice is what pulls you in. It's important when you enter into a group that you continue to listen to your inner voice. Now, I have been pushed back on this one here. In previous small group discussions, people have pointed out to me that you can't always trust your inner voice, particularly if you come from traumatic situations, because traumatic situations will cause your inner voice to do things like, I need to go back to my boyfriend who beats me up. I need some alcohol right now. I just need to go get drunk. I'm going to go buy super cheap wine and lay out on the sidewalk. If that's what you did, it will tell you to do that, right? But it's worse than that. If people are expert manipulators, they know how to take your inner voice and hijack it and turn it against you. That's what we're going to talk about a little bit next week, but it's there. And if you are not careful when you go into a group and you're not giving yourself the tools to question different aspects about that group, you're not equipping yourself to know whether you're safe there or not, because they know what they're doing. You show up, they separate you from your friends. They start finding out things about you and start explaining why things fit you the way that you do. You're in a tumultuous time in your life and you're vulnerable. They know what they're doing. That can happen in churches as well. And that's what happens in communities. And Jesus himself is launching a community. So this was a really long introduction, but let's get into the scripture. This was really front heavy, I promise you. John 14:5 through 31. Thomas said to him, Lord, we don't know where you are going, so how can we know the way? Jesus answered, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. If you really know me, you will know my Father as well. From now on, you do know him and have seen him. Philip said, Lord, show us the Father, and that will be enough for us. Jesus said, don't you know me, Philip, even after I have been among you for such a long time? Anyone who has seen me has seen the Father. How can you say, show us the Father? Don't you believe that I am the Father, that the Father is in me? The words I say to you, I do not speak on my own authority. Rather, it is the Father living in me who is doing his work. Believe me when I say that I am in the Father and the Father is in me, or at least believe on the evidence of the works themselves. Verily, truly I tell you, whoever believes in me will do the works I have been doing, and they will do even greater things than these, because I am going to the Father. And I will do whatever you ask in my name, so that the Father may be glorified in the Son. You may ask me for anything in my name, and I will do it. If you love me, keep my commandments. And I, the Father, and he will give you another advocate to help you and be with you forever. The Spirit of truth. The world cannot accept him because neither sees him nor knows him, but you know him, for he lives with you and will be in you. I will not leave you as orphans. I will come to you. Before long, the world will not see me anymore, but you will see me because I live. You will also live. On the day you realize that I am in my Father, and you are in me, and I am in you, on that day. Whoever has my commands, keeps them, is the one who loves me. The one who loves me will be loved by my Father, and I too will love them and show myself to them. Then Judas, not Judas Iscariot, said, but Lord, why do you intend to show yourself to us and not to the world? Jesus replied, anyone who loves me will obey my teaching. My Father will love them, and we will come to them and make our home with them. Anyone who does not love me will not obey my teaching. These words you hear are not my own. They belong to the Father who sent me. All this I have spoken while still with you. But the advocate, the Holy Spirit, whom the Father will send in my name, will teach you all the things and will remind you of everything I have said to you. Peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid. You have heard me say, I am going away, and I am coming back to you. If you loved me, you would be glad that I am going to the Father, for the Father is greater than I. I have told you now before it happens, so that when it does happen, you will believe. I will not say much more to you, for the prince of this world is coming. He has no hold over me. You know who the prince of the world is? It's the devil. But he comes so that the world may learn that I love the Father and do exactly what my Father has commanded me. So, when I read this passage, it seems to me that Jesus is in total control of the situation. He's the undisputed leader. He's the Son of God who's speaking on behalf of God, and only he's hearing God, and he has authority over these people. He is coming to Israel to ransom captive Israel, which includes taking some of Israel, not everybody's going to reject them, and reforming the group to follow his commands so that this previous Jewish faith is twisted a little bit to meet a new way of looking at the world. Most of the twisting is really removing the nationalist elements out of it, because when you're removing the nationalist elements out of it, it becomes a global faith. But that's what happens. Jesus is launching a new movement, cultivating a new movement that will cultivate worship like him, to him. Kind of crazy. It's kind of fun. But Jesus has cultivated this new faith. Now, sometimes we, in our faith, in our circles, say things like, it's not a religion, it's a relationship. And that's true to some degree, but let's be honest, it's also a religion. I mean, when you think about what happened this morning, like, this is not an improvised sermon. It's a little bit off the cuff, but like it's lined out. Like, my wife and Charlene like discussed like what they were going to sing this morning, except for "O Come, O Come, Emmanuel." I kind of threw that on them, but everything else they did because they planned it. The way we set up these chairs, the way we set up the donuts, the coffee, we have the communion bread over here. This is all done on purpose because these are little micro rituals that make a larger ritual, all of which are used by us to relate to the Lord. So when we say things like it's not a religion, it's a relationship, as if it's actually can be a one or the other kind of thing, I think it sounds crazy. I think we're missing the point. We are cultivating worship for the Lord. And when you come here, we will love you for who you are, but it will change things about you. It will. This isn't one of those, well, if you've been here for a week, we're starting to expect you to, you were drinking a fifth of whiskey every day. Now we're asking you to be drinking a pint. Like, we want to see results. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about pressure on your behavior changes. Like, there's no measuring up. I messed up because I wanted to give the preview for the Center Set Church thing to Matt today. I just didn't get it done. And I'll send you all the stuff about it this week on the internet. If anybody wants to know about it, who hears this online, I'll send you about it. We'll have a video for it next week. It'll be perfect to go into the next sermon too. But we do not measure your success here. We root for it. I care about your success, but I don't care how much you're succeeding for some kind of rubric. You know, the only thing I care about is that the Lord grows inside of your heart and your life sees his beauty where you go, that you are filled with joy. That's what I want. I don't care what you do when you're not here, other than I just want you to succeed. So, but it will change you because this is a different culture. You'll make friends here. You'll absorb a different way of living. You'll absorb different beliefs. That will change your perspective on things. People who know you, who have seen you before you became a part of this community, will notice differences inside of you. That is unavoidable. No matter where you go, whether you're joining a bowling league, whether you start a new workplace, whether you start going to a different coffee shop on a regular basis, that is going to have an impact on you. You're shaped by the people that you find your lives around. And people who really know how to manipulate people, and believe me, they know. It comes from the Chinese to the Koreans, and from the Koreans, it spreads out. The Koreans washed the brain. That was their term, to wash the brain. And they did it, and they taught the Koreans how to do it, and the South Koreans in that camp learned it from them. And now these ultra-capitalist Moonies brought that kind of stuff all throughout the world. They know. We'll get into brainwashing next week because it's a loaded thing. It's a very loaded thing. I can't wait to get into it next week, but it's good. It's good, I promise you. It's Jesus honoring. They know what they're doing, though. So, how do you avoid this? If you're vulnerable to the group dynamics that you join, what do you do? How do you avoid it? Turns out the number one thing is understanding the leader. Because understanding that there are literally predators walking around amongst us. Not all sociopaths are predators. They're definitely not. But there's 2 million sociopaths in North America, according to one of the cult books I was listening to. And that doesn't count the people with narcissistic personality disorder, which is similar. They're similar in that one is usually at their core is filled with rage, and one of them is filled with humiliation. And they've learned to associate with the world in a way that doesn't bond with this part of them. That's usually what is happening if I understand it correctly. And I took abnormal psychology, and I remember we had to diagnose the BTK killer. That was what I had to do we all had to diagnose a serial killer. And the dude literally fits antisocial personality disorder and narcissistic personality disorder to a T, because they're so overlapping. They're so overlapping that some people think that they're the same thing. And they're amongst us. And they either want power or they desperately need respect. They need your admiration. Everybody needs admiration, but some people need it more. These people exist, and they do know what they're doing. You learn it naturally, but you can learn more. You can get better at it. You can get a lot better at it. And let's be honest, not everybody who runs a cult, not everybody who runs a church that runs like a cult fits that description either. Which is why naturally we're going to turn to Lord of the Rings real quick, right? Absolutely. So J.R. Tolkien was asked, what would happen if Gandalf put on the Ring of Power? What would happen if Gandalf put on the Ring of Power? Wouldn't he have been able to kill Sauron? And J.R. Tolkien's answer was, yes, he would have been able to kill Sauron, but he would have been so much worse than Sauron. He would have been terrible because he would have done almost the same exact stuff to those people. But he wouldn't have been doing it for his own power and for his own glory. He would have convinced himself that he was doing it for their benefit. He would have been like trying to protect them from evil. And his need for power would have been justified. You have to be wary of that too. People who are afraid of the outside world, afraid of the devil, which roars around, prowling around like a roaring lion, right? They're afraid of it, so they become it. They hold it. That's what you have to be wary of. Jesus doesn't do either. Jesus isn't narcissistic. Jesus isn't antisocial. And Jesus isn't controlling. Jesus is so not controlling that rather than taking down Caesar, he took himself to Calvary. Calvary is a way of allowing you to be yourself while also being the disciple of God. We'll really preach on that on Good Friday. But yes, we are called to be in relationship with Jesus, to follow him. He's a different kind of leader. He's a complicated guy. We could talk about that for a year and just talk about different attributes of Jesus. One of the things about Jesus is that he's kind of the prototype. He's the prototype of humanity. He is humanity. He is God, and he's humanity worshiping God. We, in becoming like Jesus, become the prototype of what it means to worship God, to walk with God. It doesn't mean we lose our individuality. It just means that we become like our prototype. That is what we're looking for. That's why he came to the earth. Because I'm going to mess up. I'm going to mess up all the time. Any other buddy who replaces me, I think they're going to mess up worse. Yeah, I think they will. You can't put your hope in people. You can't put your hope in them. We really should have we could have called this title, O Come, Emanuel, and Ransom, Captive Evangelicalism. But I just like being able to talk about, just say it over and over again. So let's take communion. Because we're talking about forgiveness, I don't have the script up here, so I'm just going to roll with it. No, I'm just going to try it. Does everybody have stuff? Did we hand them out? I don't remember. Look, my mom handed it out. My mom set this up like with 20 minutes to go. I got here and was like, I didn't get garland. Oh no. My mom shows up with poinsettias and garland and makes this thing look so much better than it did. And I'm just grateful. Look at this loaf that Michelle brought. Holy cow. She's the best bread maker I've ever experienced in my life. It's worthy of the sacrament. On the night our Lord Jesus was betrayed, he broke bread. He said, "This is the body of the new covenant broken for you. Take and eat." He took wine. He said, "This is the blood of the new covenant poured out for you. Take and drink." Do this in remembrance of me. I'm going to let my wife close us out in prayer because I'm done.